Chris, you'll never have to fold a t-shirt again.
Apparently. It should be quietly in the corner.
All right, well, that's not the program. We're going to give a little update on the Humboldt aviation system, some updates on passenger air service and what we're doing on the development side and what we've done. We'll take questions. Aviation is something that people feel very passionate about, mostly because they contact us when they're delayed or canceled. And we are, we have some challenges, but we also are very lucky in some ways when you look at some of our comparably sized airports across the country. The formal introduction is that Emily Jacobs is the official title is the program coordinator of the Humboldt County Aviation Division. Basically, it means she does everything. She's in charge of overseeing operations. She's the airport security coordinator. She is the certified NOAA weather observer, and has to oversee leases, tenants, airline relations, had to help with the guys that brought the old bombers out, supervises the fire department out there and all the ASWs, airport service workers, and is responsible for not only the big airport here, but all 6 of the Humboldt County airports. And they do that with 12 people. Supposed to be 19, but we'll talk about why that is later. When I get political and she goes. I'm going to start, as some of you probably know, most of you know, we're married. So that means we completely did not practice this at all. I just said, hey, guess what I obligated us to do on Friday? I think I told her yesterday or Wednesday, maybe? Yeah. And so I'm going to make up for that tomorrow at Oyster Fest sometime. So I'm going to start with just a few general things, and then we'll talk some about the air service efforts that we're doing, and we'll just kind of tag team, interrupt. You know how I love to interrupt. So as I give, so shall I receive. If you have any questions. So here's one that people just don't believe. Guess what? Flying is cheaper. No, it's not as expensive. In constant dollars, flying now, this is the gross airfare, is 24% cheaper in constant dollars than it was in 1995. Now, what did they do? They started charging you for bags and some of this what they call unbundling. But the margins are thinner. We have Spirit, JetBlue, Southwest, Frontier, and a bunch of other what they call ULCCs, ultra low-cost carriers. Some of these were new airlines that could start up without having to fund long pension funds. You know, they used older aircraft like Allegiant. They used really old aircraft. They're upgraded their kids now. But they were able to offer really low fares. And as a result, we've gone from this lovely department store, ladies wearing a bunch of dead animals, it's helping you, you can sit on the couch, to this. With our words, we want this. This is what we want. This is what we say we want. But when it comes down to it, what we're spending our money on, we're spending our money on this. And so when we see, especially in other, less so here, but certainly in other airports, where we're seeing competition from ultra low-cost carriers, JetBlue, Spirit, everything else, you're seeing a lot of downward price pressure, and those folks are very low. $99 each way, says Spirit, and it's a horrible experience. And they even say it, and I'll show you the commercial. I brought one of their commercials with us. It's pretty funny.
I just wanted to point out too, this was actually completely unintended, but the 2 shirts I picked were actually Arcata events. And Arcata Ridge Trail and Sorokin's Fire. Right.
Okay, ready?
Spirit wants to be better at explaining how they're different from other airlines. They're just trying to keep airfares low.
Spirit's all about less money, more go. Some spirit has helped him get it. It's a cheap seat for a cheap ass. Flying liner sings on gas. Hate. Oh, here's a tweet. I'd rather unicycle to Miami with 2 broken hips, says Tori. At the slim guy says, I'd rather fly in a flock of carrier pigeons than with Spirit. And I just got charged for my carry-on. Maybe paid for a water no like Rome. And this guy says, he'd rather be broken glass than fly with Spirit.
Oh, it gets worse. This next guy says we can celebrate unity.
Hate. People hate Spirit has helped them get it. It's a cheap seat for a cheap ass. We call that buying smart glass. Or anyway, go to hate1000miles.com. People get 8,000 Spirit for letting your hate go and in their sleeper.
So, that's a tongue-in-cheek thing, but it's real in the airlines because Spirit nationally, low customer service satisfaction. We hate Spirit every time we fly it, and we fly it every time. And so that's what's going on with the airlines. And we were just in a conference, and I don't know, we talk about upgauging a little bit, what's going on with
Right. As we know, the airlines have moved to larger equipment. That's why we have, well, excluding Pan Air, but that's why we have the larger airplanes with United, and that has helped with scheduling and to reduce delays. It has really helped. There's some construction going on in San Francisco, so that adds a little bit to it. And what the airlines do is, whenever they do something like upgauge and the schedules get better and the delays are reduced, then they continue to add, seats to that market until it gets to a pinch again anyway. So it does always really swing back and forth, in the airline industry. But what's keeps us all guessing on the inside is that current events really do dictate a lot of what our industry does. And so from my view, some of the things that are going on right now that apply to us directly would be Alaska Air is really noticing how many people are booking through Pan Air because they're booking, they're connecting on, you can book your ticket from ACP just on the Alaska Air website. You don't even have to deal with the Pan Air website if you don't want to. And so they are noticing that, and that gets their attention more than anything, and I know we all really want Alaska back, and so that's one thing that we can do. And also, of course, flying United. One of the things that I see in the near future is it getting, again, becoming a little bit easier for smaller airports to get service. So one of the things, we think back on like 06, 07, 08, when all the small airports had great service. And part of that was because the larger airlines had invested in wide-body aircraft for several years, and they had these really big aircraft all of a sudden that they needed to fill up. And small communities make 44% of the traffic, while any one of us is completely expendable to the large airlines. Altogether, it's a large percentage, and so because they had too much room in these airplanes, they started doing a lot of feeder routes from the smaller domestic market. Now, our international travel has grown so much over the last 10 years that as they get new airplanes, they don't really need the traffic from these smaller areas because there's so much international traffic coming in, and then especially California, there's a lot of international travel between the big cities. And one of the things that we've seen recently since the election is about a 16% decline in international travelers coming to the United States, which, while overall is not very good for the tourism market at all, and it's not very good for the larger airlines, it does have the airlines looking to the smaller communities again to fill up some of that empty space. So I do predict that we'll see a shift towards that. Now, anything can change. We can be flooded with international travel for some reason all of a sudden. So, that's unpredictable really, but I do already see it becoming easier. So I think that we will have something nice on the horizon, and then I would encourage everybody to use it up as much as possible.
So here's a little bit about passenger traffic at our little airport. So in 2007, we had just shy of 230,000 passengers, 40,000 passengers go through our airport. That's each way. That could have been one person, 240,000 times. We don't think that's true. And as we lost service, and this big drop is when Alaska left the market, we started to see it drop. Now, the last few years, we've actually increased. And so we've had an increase of almost 25% from 2015 to 2016. And that's as we had more capacity to San Francisco. In March is when we got the jets. So now we have fewer departures. Theoretically, that makes for less delays, but because you have fewer planes going into San Francisco, but it also, in some ways, makes for more inconvenience. You have 3 or 4 very full planes, and if one gets delayed or canceled, you don't have all the little Embraers like you used to have to spread people out over. We get mad at United a lot because they get delayed, but we can't blame them. Their only mistake is flying into San Francisco. And so, even coming back, we saw Lisa coming back, and we were delayed coming up here, which is good, because we were actually delayed coming out of Washington, D.C. It's not just us.
And Tom.
And yeah, Tom Taylor was on the same flight, and Virginia Bass, Rob Barkley, it was like the whole crew was there. You can't blame United if the air traffic controller says you can't launch your plane because San Francisco's backed up. And so we get mad at United. They don't like to be delayed, and because it costs them money to cancel. It costs them big money. That being said, what I blame them for, and we keep telling them, why don't you fly in Denver or Los Angeles? So we keep doing that. So, San Francisco is the bottleneck. It always has been. There's probably not a good relief for that in terms of San Francisco. And then right now they're redoing one of the runways, so we're getting some of that. So that's United. So we've had a reduced number of departures. We have bigger planes, 76-seat Embraer E175. When we got that very early on, when that was coming into their fleet, a lot of the other airports that we work with are very jealous by that. Oh, E175 carries 2.5 times the number of people as one of our new turboprops we had just a couple years ago, and so you have fewer flights. And
there is one large complaint on that aircraft, and it's that it gets to San Francisco so fast there's no beverage service.
And I don't get a good nap. I used to get it used to be like an hour and 15 minutes. I could take a good hour nap on that flight. Now it's not. But you can see what's happening. We've had this many departures in 2015 with this many seats. Now we have fewer departures but more seats. And there's a reason for that, and we'll go into why we're getting bigger planes and why we're getting less frequency. Penn Air started. They did great up until January, and then they began having some real operational problems. Operational problems means they had some maintenance issues on some planes that took them out of service. They have 3 planes that are based in Portland to serve the Northwest market, which is 5. And pilot shortage. We'll talk about that in a minute. That's probably the thing that's going to affect the airline industry more than anything else. And we just came back from an airline conference last week. I think that's what everybody was talking about.
The pilot shortage, yeah.
Pilot shortage.
The beauty of having 2 airlines, and the airlines actually like this, they prefer to have this alternative too, is that, for instance, when we were on our way to the East Coast, our United flight was hopelessly delayed. And so they were able to put us on Penn Air to Portland, and from Portland we picked back up with United and continued on to the East Coast, and so that can go both ways. So if Portland is okay but San Francisco's in trouble or vice versa, then the airlines can work together and vouch for each other over. And so they really do prefer that to just being stuck, and that's one of the reasons that it's so important to support Penn Air.
So, pilot shortage. 2 things happened, I think we've talked about before. First thing was pilots are retiring like mad because they're hitting mandatory retirement age. The second thing, well, actually it's three things. Second thing that happened is the number of flying hours you need to have to get your air transport certificate for the air carriers went up to from 250 up to 1,500 hours. So they made it much harder. And you know, most folks on our side of the air, you know, the airports and the airlines themselves said that's not a good rule, that you should have 1,500 hours of training and flight experience and everything else. But the FAA rule right now is 1,500 hours flying a plane. They say actually, you know, pilots I've talked to in the airline industry say your skills actually get worse if you're just trying to get hours. What you want, because your training is getting further and further behind, right? You did all this training, and now you're kind of just flying, get your hours up, and then you can get back and try to get your transfers. So it is, so within a decade, cumulative demand is forecast to be near 50,000 pilots in the next decade. This is from the conference we did last year. What's happening is, of course, is that the big legacy carriers are offering better and better packages, and they're taking pilots from the regional airlines like SkyWest and Air, who serves us. And so those pilots who would spend a lot of time in the cockpit in a regional are now bumping up to legacy carriers much more quickly. The little regionals are scrambling to find new pilots because that's your entry point. And when I mentioned the third thing, this is happening actually in every professional industry that I've ever touched across the country. We have too few people. You know, and Tomas is shaking his head, nodding his head, he knows it. We have, our labor force is shrinking because people are retiring, and we don't have as many people coming into the labor force because the previous generation didn't make babies like the generation before that.
With the mandatory pilot, with their mandatory retirement from the airlines, essentially, you know, it actually, when they increased the hours, they moved it from 60 to 65 because they just said we need 5 more years to deal with this, and so there's just so many pilots retiring because they're hitting that age. The nice thing about that is, when it comes to young people, they can get into a direct path to becoming a commercial pilot now, and have a lot of that education paid for with big sign-on bonuses and be making $150,000 within 5 to 10 years. So that's, you know, it was a long time with this huge baby boomer generation while they were pilots, while they were still sitting in those seats, that the next generation could not budge. And it's one of the reasons people stopped wanting to be pilots, because you could get professional training and pilot a regional for $40,000 a year for the rest of your career without advancement, and that's not very attractive, especially when your training goes from $25,000 to $150,000 because of a rule change. And so, with the expense and the hours that it takes now to become a pilot, that the pay for being a pilot is also reflecting that. So, for young people out there that are interested in something like that, it's, you know, and there's a lot more than just flying passengers. I think Virginia Bass's sister flies 747s for, she doesn't fly people, so she flies packages. You know,
She flies with FedEx.
you know, I have a good friend who flies corporate, just a business jet, and is always doing really fun things with, you know, fun great groups. He just doesn't like flying professional sports groups.
Right.
He says they stink up his airplane.
So here's what's happening kind of nationally. 39, between the last few years, 39% of U.S. airports got reductions of 10% or more. These are schedule reductions, not necessarily capacity reductions. 23% got schedule reductions of 20% or more. That includes us. So our schedule, we have 20% fewer flights. Now our capacity is bigger because we have two and a half times the number of people on each plane. 18 U.S. airports lost passenger and air service completely, and you can see on here X's, three X's in California, 4 X's in California. Airports have lost all service completely. And there's no quick fix for that right now. I mean, it was, like I said, when we were in the conference last week, it was the biggest topic. So how does that affect us? This used to be the number of departures up here, number of seats down here. Now, number of departures are down here, number of seats are up there. So fewer departures, more seats. Well, if you're an airline, that makes perfect sense, right? You still have 2 pilots and a flight attendant. Now you have 2 pilots and 2 flight attendants on the 76-seater. You have to have one for every 50. So you're flying a lot less, you're flying a lot more people. And by the way, don't forget, those people are those price, not so much here, we're actually pretty price inelastic just because we don't have a lot of competition. But nationally, people hate Spirit. We hate Spirit. And we fly them every time. You know, we'll never do that again. $99 though. God, okay, we'll do it. And so the pressure now you're seeing like in United and some of these other airlines are doing the economy, I don't know what they call it, super economy minus, the basic economy.
I just learned that you have to pay if you actually want to choose your seat.
Yes.
That was new.
Yeah.
And that's on United, in the economy, on the economy minus, what I call it, economy minus, yeah. And economy plus, you're assigned, but that is what they, you know, Southwest is the one that pioneered. Everyone loves Southwest, but they were really the pioneers. And then you had the Spirit and JetBlues and Legion, and they're like what they call it menu pricing. You want a ticket to get on the plane? Sure. Oh, you want to be on the front of the line? It's this much. Do you want your seat assignment? It's this much. Are you carrying something on? It might be this much. And so they menu it up, and it's a model that works. Those ultra low cost carriers are absolute disruptors nationally. Absolute disruptors.
So when I went to Florida, I saw you guys. Chris usually books our tickets, and I booked it this time. And I thought, oh, okay, flying out of Arcade, okay, it's $30 cheaper or something, you know. And I thought, this is great. And it still was a lot because it was a short notice for booking. But then when I got it to get my boarding pass, well, we can't give you your seat. You're going to have to wait, you know, a little bit. Anyway, they gave me my seat. I was the very last row on the aisle, and I get back there, and there's a family, and they want to sit together. I said, okay, no problem. And then this stewardess comes up to me, and she says, you know, we have about 6 rows that are empty, so just go ahead and take whichever one you want. I thought, oh my gosh, this economy, or this basic pays off. You know, it's like, I had the whole row for the whole flight to Florida. It was great.
The other half of that is that you don't know if you're going to be the one bounced from your seat, because apparently your basic is that level.
Never do that again.
That doesn't guarantee you a seat. You kind of like you're having to pay that extra $20 just to get out of that category, of possibly being bounced, not being able to pick your seat, and you know.
Well, and you know, I think they're going to speak in the pot on this, considering recent events. But as it is now, if you're involuntarily bumped, they have a checkbook right there, and they will write you a check for double the cost of your ticket, pay for your hotel. You have spending money for it. It's like you know, they have to call corporate if it's going to be above $2,000, something like, you know. But they're also rebooking you on the next flight, and so, you know, now I think they're going to be able to go to $10,000. So, you know, I'm not saying kick the screen. No, I'm not saying you have to be drug off the flight or anything. But you know, you do have some buying power when it comes to that now.
Is there any data on whether people are flying more because they're $99 flights?
You know, I would say yes. And the airlines talk about, you know, the price sensitivity, and they've seen that. You know, the air traffic, and I have a great slide, I didn't put it in here, air traffic is going through the roof, and internationally, not just nationally. And a big part of that, they believe, is that sort of low airfare. I mean, air travel used to be something that was only for the elite and the business folks, right? I mean, I flew once. I mean, we didn't have any money growing up. I mean, you know, so my grandparents flew us from San Francisco to Orange County to go to Disneyland one time when I was 8 years old. Oh my gosh, it was amazing. And then I flew again when I was 22. Because it wasn't something that I could afford. I had no money. My parents didn't have any money. And so it was just like my grandparents, of course, would fly from places every now and again. It's like, wow, you got dressed thinking we were, oh my gosh. Air California, I was so many. Air California 737 is a little airline that went back and forth.
There's two things that two new ideas I'm trying to put out there to everybody about airports. And one is about the GA airports, and that's a whole different thing. But about the commercial airports is that we tend to focus on how easy it is for us to get in and out of Humboldt County. But we also really want to increase tourism in Humboldt County. And we need to focus a little bit about how hard it is for tourists to get in and out of Humboldt County. because along with the roads issues that we have, you know, we have two big slides that are being worked on, and they're all backed up and will be all summer long. When you look at what tourists spend in an area, air travelers spend quite a bit more, and they stay longer. And a couple of those things are because they have more days because they flew in, they rent a car because they flew in, and they tend to have more money because they, obviously if they're flying in, and so they tend to be able to spend more money somewhere. And so attracting that tourism from outside of the area with air travel is also you know, something that will make it a lot easier for us to get in and out, and they sort of play to each other. So for all the people that have businesses that want more tourism here and want more money spent here, making it easier for people to fly in, just like it's easy, making it easier for us to get out, is a way to really expand that. And on the GA side, this is just a plug. The county has been able to have a lot of the land at all 6 airports in the county rezoned, and working on that for commercial and industrial, so that will allow more commercial industrial space to be leased shortly.
So a few points. One of which is, as I mentioned, we just got back from an air service conference, and what we do there is we meet with airlines. We give them big packages, a lot of data, and we try to do two things. Get a new airline and get a new destination. More flights and more destinations, as we say. And so we met with 5 airlines, and really the way that works is you do your presentation, you stay in touch, which we do anyway. You hope for a headquarters meeting. We have consultants that work for us that do data crunching for us in the pitch. The cool thing is, and this has happened before, but the cool thing is when we come back and you get an email from somebody that says, hey, that was a really interesting presentation, we want more data and this and that and that. That means they are looking at your market. We have been successful at recruiters. Some people say, well, why don't you, when's the last time you got a new airline here? And now I say, well, last year. Actually, she did, Penn Air. 2012, we had American in the schedule, but there was a glitch, not our glitch, but we won't go into it, but it was kind of a political problem we had. But American was ready to provide, in 2012, two flights a day to LAX. And in fact, you know, the Alaska service to Los Angeles didn't just happen. That was actually the result of a number of years of work between our airport and the Reading Airport, subsidies from the federal government and the local communities, and it took 2 or 3 years to get that service up and running and going. And so that's the way this industry works. Unless you're a major hub, and even if you're a major hub, you go to these conferences, airports from all over the country, you know, we all have the exact same goal. 2 goals. New service, and the sub-goal is, it might be that I am competing with you and I want your service. So we're all really nice at the receptions, but we know that we're there trying to, we're all fighting over a finite resource, which is planes and people.
Right. And one thing, you know, when you're meeting with the airlines, right now, for any community to get a route anywhere or any new service, another community is losing service. There are no airplanes or crews that aren't somewhere serving an area. So you can do really well and have your airplane full 80% all the time and have high prices, but if Arcata comes along and we can fill it up 85% and the prices can be a little bit higher, you know, we'll get that airplane. And so that's something that the airlines look at. And so it's a little cutthroat.
So right now we have 3 legacy carriers and just a smattering of small regionals that are servicing. I was given a map the other day, the air service map, Texaco Fuels 1964, every airport in the United States and all the airlines that were serving them. The Key had 94 airlines listed. Right now, we're probably, I mean, we're dealing with 5 or 6 at the most universe for the West Coast. And you know, it's kind of the same everywhere. So you have 400 plus airports competing for the attention of really a half a dozen companies. Right? Yep.
I just, you know, look at the economics on this flight route. I think they're getting 14, 15 grand each leg from here to San Francisco. The margins have to be pretty good.
Ours is. Our local margins are good. And that's what we show. They measure it in a couple ways. The yield is, there's another thing called a revenue per available seat mile. So you take the total revenue and you look at the number of seats, the number of miles you fly, and it's measured in cents. I mean, you know, the business runs on a very thin margin overall. And so you see some of these routes are very thin margin. They kind of make it up, you know, through the volume, the Walmart model. And then, but our fares are higher. And then people go, you need to tell United to drop your fares. Drop their fares. Just demand it. Demand it. And I said, their planes are full. You're a business person. If you're selling everything you're making at this price, why would you drop the price?
That's where you wonder if they added another route, drop the price, if they could get even more money.
Well, and and we have seen prices come down a little bit lately.
My last day was $1,400.
Flying out.
Ouch. That must have been
Wow,
very short notice.
expensive.
That must have been pretty short.
Going in 3 weeks, I worked it last week, and a month now.
Do you use Google Flights at all? Because that's insane.
Yeah, I went out and tried to book it
Despite all the
myself.
slides and everything.
Give me a call next time.
We'll spend the night.
No, it's unfortunate.
Oh, okay. Because, I mean, you know, I booked my ticket like 1 week in advance to Rhode Island, and it was $800.
It must be just like a snake.
And also, there's going to be some like crazy prices over the summer. So look around on Google Flights. There's some low-cost international carriers that are really challenging United and some of the bigger carriers. So there's like round-trip tickets to, you know, France for $400 or $500, Asia. So they're having kind of an international price war this summer.
Yeah. Bob had a question.
Yeah, when did that hourly training thing change? Who was responsible for that? Was it a reaction to an accident?
Yes.
It was a nonsensical reaction to an accident that happened. The accident was not because of, it could have had to do with pilot fatigue, which at the same time as they extended the training hours, they did change the rules about time in between, and everybody thinks that that's been a really good thing. Pilots, airports, everybody.
The timing out thing is good, but.
How long ago?
Oh gosh,
It was the-
10
well,
years
it was
ago,
the
the
whole-
Colgan Air
That
crash.
happened, and then it took the FAA, you know, years with the rulemaking, and it was postponed, and finally, you know, it's one of those things where they did it, and it's tied to safety, so it will be very hard to ever change. But like Greg was saying, they find that when you have to have 1,500 hours of training instead of 250, you're training too long before you're out there in the real world. They actually find they do better when they only have the 250 hours of training and then they're next to a captain. It's so, but it won't be changed back. But the industry is doing things to work on relieving that with, as far as what they count as training hours. So the bigger issue is the amount of 65-year-old pilots that are going to be required to retire.
So if you've got kids, and I had my son completely convinced to be a pilot 2 years ago. I mean, for years, that's all he wanted to be as a pilot. And then when it came down to getting ready to go to school, he decided he wanted to be in computers. So, so instead of having his education paid for by the airlines, I told him he can't go to college. Now Dad's paying for it. It's like, damn it! And I wanted family flight privileges. What's wrong with you? And I always wanted to be a pilot. So I had to live through you. Come on. So that's, yeah, Matt.
Are we going to get like charter service back? I mean, after Al retired, there's none
Right.
based here and that gets expensive.
So we did meet with the airline called Surf Air, and they're like a subscription. So it's something like $1,700 a month now, where you fly essentially as much as you want between where they go, where they decide to go. It really does work out for businesses if they have several people flying. You know, they can
The
put
group.
anybody on. It's interesting. They did say that they had noticed they were flying around Cannabis Cowboys now, and so that's one of the reasons they were interested all of a sudden in our area. You know, and just I just say, let's see, we had a Gulf here the other day, and then we had another jet yesterday, and these are just people coming to look at land, and they're, you know, in that industry. So we're seeing a lot of private jets coming in for that, and there is some charter that will be interested, and then I guess, you know, these people aren't really the end user, so I don't think they care so much about going through security. But in the cannabis industry, but they do like just avoiding all that. They do like just getting on the little.
Apparently there's still some sort of badge thing that they don't like. They don't like being around people with badges. So that's just a little bit on passenger air service. We could go all day on that. It's a fascinating topic. She's been doing it longer than me. I've been doing it for 12, 15 years now. And the message is, it's not great. And they're confusing messages. We're lucky we have what we have. It's not great. We want better. But let's not piss off the people that are here providing a service, because we've got hundreds of other airports that would love to take it from us. I want to but there's so much more. And so we've got some big things coming up in the next year, and then we'll be done. 2 minutes. We got 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So did you want to talk about any of these?
Well, it's just these are all these projects, and actually I was looking at the federal, Fed adding up some numbers, and in the last 10 years, we've brought in $30 million in federal money to do projects on the airports, and so starting next month in July, we will be rehabilitating the runways and taxiways in Garberville. That's a almost $3 million project, and those go to local contractors. It was really good in 2008 through 2011. I had more than one contractor that I talked to say, the housing market's been hard for us right now, and these airport jobs are just, they're solid. They're, like the terminal remodel, the runway rehabilitation at ACV. Those went on during a time that it was really hard for contractors, and we were able to employ a lot of local contractors. And so it's something that, and with these outlying airports, I'm trying to get across. Don't think of them as an airport. Think of them as an industrial park that has a landing strip. So really trying to develop those to make some money off of those and be able to sustain them, so we can keep bringing all that project money in.
So two things that I think are really important and we want to watch this year. This is where Emily goes, oh, my husband is big mouth. This right here, the Aviation Governance and Sustainability Plan, it is basically asking the question, is our aviation division run well by the County Department of Public Works, and what can you do this better? The first answer is hell no, it's not. You can't say that.
I can think it can be run better though.
It can be run much better. So over the course of the next year, there's an outside consultant doing this. He works with over 100 airports. He's giving sort of internal reports right now, but there will be some public meeting opportunities coming forward. I encourage everyone, if you care at all about the airports, air service, get involved in that, because we own those airports and we need to make them better. And some of the recommendations I'm already seeing are going to be very controversial, and they'll make all the difference in the world.
Right, and if you care about the general fund, I would say.
Yeah, if you care about the
that's who's shelling out the $55,000 for the report. So
that is it. We're out of time. Ask us any questions later.
Question?
Yes.
How much federal money, operating funds do the airports get, and is it going to go away?
Well, the airports don't get any money for operating from federal money. We get entitlements. We get $1 million a year entitlement for the commercial airport and $150,000 a year entitlement for most of the GA airports. I tend to grab other entitlements throughout the year. So last year I got, I think, almost $500,000 from other airports that hadn't spent their money in time, on time. So there's that, and then like for Garberville, I got $1.7 million in discretionary funding from the FAA. So, but those are all projects. None of it, airports have to come up with all their own operating funds.
And is that money in danger?
Probably not.
What do you mean, that federal money?
Yeah.
No, I mean, as long as you just have to go through all the proper paperwork hoops for the grant process.
Okay.